Okay. This feels weird. Let's do that. There you go. Good morning, Warren. How are you? Delta, thank you very much for 17 months. I appreciate that. So, hope you're well. Looking forward to a great Monday. Busy as usual, but it's another fantastic day. Good to hear. Busy's good. Busy's really good. At times. Pretty good. Well done. My Twitch subs to 4 now, I think. Well, I am very honored to be one of them. Thank you. Appreciate it. Last week was interesting. Obviously, I was away. Been reading a good architecture book. Yeah. Which one? Is that the one you were referring to in the Discord earlier, or a separate one? Oh no, because that wasn't architecture. That was it. That was procedure. Humbling Geek. Good morning. No notification. I throw it out in my Discord and I throw it out in One Line's Discord. Would you like me to start putting notifications in your Discord? Thank you very much for 14 months. Fundamentals of software architecture. An engineering approach. Huh. Mark Richards and Neil Ford. There's a new version on the horizon. Keep an eye out for that. A modern engineering approach. I'll keep an eye out for that. Yeah, so yeah, references cohesion coupling and a new word I don't understand from structured design. So I've been reading the book I linked to in my Discord, the the monolith, and I really have to make sure I find the time to sit down and continue the reading. It's easier when I'm away from home. It's easier when I'm away from home because I can focus a little bit more. I've got that breathing time to myself. Whereas if I'm here, I get distracted. It's a lot harder. But I got to start reading that, and it was scary. Hold on, monolith. I don't even manage that. That's the challenge. So we're reading. I'm going to provide the Amazon Associates link because it's nice and short already. Just know I'm not trying to capitalize on things like that. They start by going into I've read enough now. I can skim read, power read, or read for detail. The latter than being just standard reading. Yeah. My problem is the same concepts just appear and appear, and once they start to seem like, yeah, I know this, I really start to have to struggle through. The problem I have with like, especially this sort of book is there's a lot of setting the scene, and I struggle. Skip too far, but in this case, in this book, what's fascinating is um, the way they lay down the story of a system that's been, you know, not mistreated. I wouldn't say mistreated because I don't think a system has been mistreated if it's got to a point where it's successful and it's just struggling to adapt change. I think it's grown too fast, and people haven't stopped to think about whether they should do things, and they've not thought about what the overall system looks like. They've thought about what their problem is right this second and fix that problem and continue to add in. So they describe that in quite great detail, and they talk about they actually have labels for some of these things. Work from home today, done one meeting and nothing else, feeling hard today. Nah, you're not always productive. When you are productive, you make up for the time where you're not as productive. Don't worry. Um, I just finished up a larger refactor this sprint. Yeah. 1 year refactor. Okay. That's I'm not sure whether I'd classify that as a refactor or a redesign if it's greater than a year. It's a continuing effort like that. Yeah. We mix the terms all the time, don't we? A refactor sounds more productive. A redesign sounds more, oh, I made a mess. But yeah, the monolith book's quite fascinating to read through to as someone who's experienced this a few times now. The whole thing is um, troubling. How was last week? Last week was interesting. Got to do some talking. Got to do some planning. Um, got to meet with people and continue to build. Like I get the remote thing. I appreciate the remote thing. I like doing the remote thing for the work. Um, but having face to face, sitting down and brainstorming a little bit can't be replaced. I've not had that experience work well in remote environments so far. Um, it just doesn't allow the right conversations and yeah, yeah. It was corporate planning time, so yeah. I guess to brainstorm, it has to be possible for more than one person talking at a time. I mean, you can, like Mojo and I did a little bit of planning for Liquid Sky stuff a couple of weeks ago, and it does work to some extent, but it like the face to face, the ability to like the ability to just say, oh, throw out an idea and then discuss an idea and then and have a debate back and forth about it and like know that you're yielding to someone's point. I've got into a very bad habit of over talking and I don't like it, but I can't I don't like raising my hand in a meeting. It just doesn't feel right. So yeah, we'll see. We shall see. Yeah, conversation, like just a little bit of a debate on stuff can change all sorts of things. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Oh yeah, that's what I was doing. Queries, DDO commands, yeah. Yeah. The ability to throw out ideas and have a conversation about something in it without having to worry about the time, because you normally time bots a call. I saw a bad argument on Discord maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and I interjected. It's weird. It changed the tone of the argument. I think arguments online are more likely because especially if you're typing it, you end up with, you know, the tone is missed. Why is all of a sudden a bunch of a Visual Studio thread from 7 years ago has relaunched, and on long paths in Visual Studio still not being a problem, still being a problem for like CI/CD stuff. Anyway, voice chat. These guys knew each other for 2-3 years now. Huh. Okay. So, yeah, an argument. Okay. So let's talk developers.stream. So right now, I was building out some basic structure. This is not a mediator version of this, but it's a stubbing for mediator, I suppose, right this second. Basically, we have the application, the domain, the infrastructure set up. We have the app host set up, the service defaults. Figure out that later. We'll learn more about that. Last week we created, last Monday, we created the streamer card component inside of the components library, and made this accept some variables. That's a string to be displayed. Yeah. So the intent was to try and get some data to populate so we could see the screen. Again, I don't want to make this about adding streamers. I think people should sign up, so we probably do want to make that. Let's go and do a little bit of planning here. Yes, it will be. It is open source now, but again, I'm not going to take any PRs because there's so much to establish first before making a PR that it'll make a mess if I don't lay down some structure. So let's go TBD friends. Yes. So at this early phase, right? Yes. Yeah. So this is an open source project. The idea will be that we can once we got the pieces in place, then people can contribute, add components, add behaviors, etc. So right this second, what I've done is I've established some structure, and to Dota's point, right? I'm opinionated about things because I've just learned to do things a way, and that opinion is if people come along with a better argument, we discuss it and we agree upon it, then we can change it, right? I don't have an issue with changing if it's for the good of the group changing it. If someone's going to come in and say, "Oh, you should do this way," and implements their way of doing it on top as a PR, that's not going to fly because it's not. That's the sort of thing that I'm going to say, well, no, we need to discuss as a community. Is there disagreement? Is there agreement? And it all come down to contributions of the community. So what we're doing so far is we have a web project and a components project. The web project is a client and a web. So the way that OneLine was explaining this to me is basically what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to abstract the access to the data behind an interface and inject the right interface for the right piece, so that if the client needs to access the data, it might do it through an API. So if I pull the component into the client, then it's going to be client bound, and I'm going to have API calls to get the data. Whereas if I pull it into the web, it might actually have a backing of an actual service that knows how to communicate with the database. But I'll abstract that behind. But again, those patterns, those ideas, I want to establish whenever you're starting a project, it's very important. If it's going to be a shared project, right? If it's a product or whatever, it's important to establish the baseline, because if you don't establish the baseline and people come in with their own opinions on how things should be done too soon, what happens is that code base quickly becomes a Frankenstein's monster of code, because one person might like uppercasing variables in a weird way. So one person might like putting curly braces on the same line, one person might like them on the other line, one person might like tabs, person might like spaces. These are all things that will go into early pain for the project, and you'll end up debating things while you've already got productivity. You don't want to be doing that. You want to establish a good baseline, work from that baseline. So maybe I need to learn how to use editor config properly. Maybe I need to put that in place now. Probably a good idea. And allow people to check out the project once we've got the patterns established, and start contributing, knowing that they're going to have to follow some rules, right? So, and as people come along with PRs, if they don't match what we expect there to be rules, we document those to make sure that we are clear about them going forward. But I am just to be clear, I am open to change. I am open to discussion about standards, about practices, and we can all change things. But we need to establish something before we open it up the gates. So I basically just stubbed this out to try and get some idea of the interactions between these things, right? So we have an application and domain infrastructure. Now, typically what I'll do is I create an API here, but is an API the right thing? How do we make this communicate? If we create the component, right? So we have the streamer card component. It has the CS. We can inject into here something. What does that look like? So what I need to do, let's go to projects. Not sure I want to track these as issues, but if memory serves, these don't work very well as just projects. New template. Yeah. Developers.stream. And I create a new template. Remove project. Add project templates from your organization to view them here. Okay. New project. Team planning, future release. Board. Roadmap. Probably better right this second. Kanban's not really. Let's do table from now. Word list. I'm just call it word list for right a second. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so add item, create new issue. Okay, this is blank issue. Gotcha. So what I'm not trying to do is develop the features. I'm trying to develop the structure so that there is something to develop features into. So this is where I need to learn something, right? So I don't know the right way to discuss to describe what I'm trying to do here, right? So I've got to learn something along the way. This component, as I understand it, I can reference it in here, and I can also reference it in here. I need this component to be configurable on both sides. So if I have, let's say we have contracts. Let's say we have interface, and we have I streamer query, I streamer repository. I don't want to call it repository. It's not what I want to represent here. This would be a bad name. Let's not worry about the name. iStreamer query. Let's just quit that for right a second. And this returns IEnumerable. See, that's the problem. Application. If application contains that, how does the infrastructure contain? You can't reference that interface. But application can't reference infrastructure. Can it? No. I was asking the question of Claude earlier on to see if it would answer me about the dependency direction. So if I put this in the infrastructure layer, which makes sense, the interface can live anywhere. The class is forced into the internal layer. I get that the interface can live anywhere. So ultimately, I'd create an API client and and then an interface that wraps around my commands and queries. What I'm thinking about though is it's not just the interface. It's the model. Does that live in shared kernel to try and get rid of that dependency? So this streamer DTO right now, I did it before just to test it. All right, just again, I'm trying to establish these patterns, right? I'm trying to make sure that I'm clear about what they should be doing. You have a streamer query at the application layer. DTO is just data. It's a result right now. It's not a command or an event in this case. It's not coming in, it's going out. It's the result of the data, but abstracts the domain object. And that's why I'm thinking about it. So that's how I typically do it. I have all my models that can be used in front or back end in a shared project, in the shared kernel. Because that's the way around that, because then everything has a reference to shared kernel. I think of the details of what the method name is typically. And the method is a generic handle in my code. Well, the DTO is the abstraction to stop you from referencing your domain model specifically, which in this case will be from the database. Like I get this, like having the interface at the infrastructure layer is just the infrastructure. I can then implement the API, and I can implement the API, and I can implement whatever I call it for accessing it from the other side. So in this case, we're going to inject. Can you do constructor injection in this, or do you have to do the inject thing still? I can't remember. But either way, we're going to inject I stream a query, right? And that's going to give us an instance of that. Now, when we use it, nice. Okay, cool. That's, yeah, I stream a query, right? When we use that in the code, right? So this is only ever going to talk through the interface. It's never going to talk through, it's never going to know whether it's using API or database. So if we drag the component into the client side, we can do the client version of it. If we drag it into the server version, we can do it. We can adapt that as we want. I get the purpose of that. That's a nice thing to have. We don't have to then care about how we're getting the data, just that we are. So we'd have to implement two versions of this. One would be an API client version, right? Which in the clean architecture thing lives kind of in the outside thing, as does the infrastructure piece. Application lives in the inside, and then domain in the center. So the DTO is your disconnect from your domain, right? So here in my live streamer spec, I say, okay, I want a streamer object, but I'm going to bring it out as a DTO, right? I'm going to transform it in here for you, by the way. So this will allow me to do that. And then, public IEnumerable, the channels can come out here. You can just have a listed name channels, all sorts of other stuff, right? So that's the goal. That's not a DTO. That's a database object. That's a model. I mean, I suppose you could argue it's a data transfer object by virtue of, yeah, that's the Adalis spec. Family Geek. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose I'm considering the model to be, it just happens to come from the database, right? So my domain entity is essentially the same thing as the data model. But either way, I'm still not exposing them. Whether they're the same thing or they're different things and there's mapping in between, they're a different concern. This one is to tend it outside of application. So this is for coming out. So I think one lion's solution is, I stream a query and get streamers, right? So this interface here will create a, you still have to create an adapter for the query to consolidate this. We'd still have to have an adapter. But yeah, we configure it differently. So yeah, there's no right way. This is an established design that we've seen multiple instances of how to do it right. Transferring data, it seems like this should be defined individually. She's talking about my solution, I'm uncommitted. No, one line's talking about the way that I just said that we'll create shared. Because hold on, let me not get into the super weeds of clean architecture there. I don't want to be. How do you claim complete guide? So, okay, let's bring this over here. Does that encompass the aggregate route? Well, again, if you go into domain-driven design over clean architecture, like adding that extra layer of understanding the aggregate routes, yeah, essentially my domain objects are my aggregate routes, right? Or some of them are, right? So frameworks and drivers, internal interface adapters, entities, use cases, clean architecture, right? Different diagrams have different purposes. What this does not tell you very clearly, it gives you, here you go, interface adapters. This layer translates the data from the most commonly used format by use case and entities into a format generated from external entities such as databases, website interfaces. It possesses controllers, presenters, gateways, and APIs. They're essential components of software. This eliminates the possibility of the inner layers changing due to new additions in the outer layers, thus maintaining the dependency rule. Right. So what we're discussing, not debating anything right this second. So we define this infrastructure layer lives in that interface adapters layer, right? So because my actual implementation of my DB context is here, because that's what interfaces. The internals just deal with the repository. They don't deal with DB context. It's an outer adapter. And again, we get into this discussion, but you look at the different implementations of clean architecture and they all differ slightly. There's all like a name given here or a name given there. So all we have to do is come up with something that is clear enough that any one of us can describe it. And that's what matters most. And again, that's what matters most in building software. It's not that it follows someone's rule. It's that it's clean, that we can change it, that we're not scared of changing it. Yeah. So we can always revert, right? Let's create developers.stream shared kernel. Let's create this, right? No, it should not map one-to-one. A DTO is for transferring data. Yeah, okay, good correction. No, DTO is for being able to transfer data between layers without exposing internal concerns. So if I don't want to share an ID of my data model, then I can remove that in the DTO. If I want to construct a new field from two other pieces of data, I can do that in a DTO, right? I can use it to transfer the data in the way I want to transfer it. How I map to it is not the problem. It's just that I don't want to expose internals of the application to the outside. So would you use a DTO as a source for a view model? Could argue a view model is another form of DTO. So yeah, the aggregate route in that example is fleet, which is just a list of cab DTOs. Yeah, I store fleets in the DB, not showing that either. Well, you could argue that a fleet consists of cabs. So if a cab has a fleet associated with it as a concept, then yeah, you might just have fleet cabs as a table that has a fleet ID and a cab ID, and that's all it needs. It's worth playing with this stuff. It's worth going through this stuff. It's worth debating and pulling it apart and changing it until you're comfortable with it and making sure that ultimately what you're trying to do is make sure that the internals of the application behave correctly without worrying about the external representation of them. And that's where the whole DTOs comes around, because you need to transfer the objects back and forth in an understood way without actually worrying about how they do things, right? The implementation doesn't matter. Yeah. I guess a cab could have a fleet number and then there's no need for a fleet table. We need somewhere to own the fleet number, right? So fleet doesn't need to be complex object, even if it's a complex subject. Because if you have a fleet table that has fleet cabs associated with it, which is just a list of fleet to cab ID, and that's all the database stores, but then the fleet has behaviors of registering a cab, etc., because it owns that behavior, then that's yeah. Many fleets have many cabs, right? Um, Apex, good morning. How's things? Stream is good. We are building a Monday Friday project today. Continuing on with the idea of developers.stream. Well, you see, that'll get us all crazy. Figuring out the right way to do things will just send us all into a crazy spiral of never-ending doubt and self-questioning. We are trying to establish some patterns within the code that we can build upon. So we're just kind of discussing, where things live. Again, we do this. That's why I don't grow as a dev. Always worrying about doing it the right way. Apex, thank you very much for the resub. 13 months, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You can't continually worry about doing it the right way. And if anybody who comes along says, "Oh, you're doing it wrong," right? And they can't show you, ignore them. What matters most is that you build software that works. And I know I criticize code bases that are, just jammed in there and like years of just no care and attention. I know I criticize that. But those applications work. They do a job. You can't debate that. And in the cases I've experienced, they make money. They're not making money. They're making a lot of money. The problem is the development of them. The future development of them is difficult because of those past decisions. So hindsight is great, right? But all I'm saying is build something, but build something you are confident you know how it works and how to change it. Right? Don't just throw code in there, but there's no right way. There's ways that work. I will say, if something starts to feel a bit like, I don't know how, like, this is why I paused, right? Because I was like, well, I don't know where this fits. I'm not sure. Like, to Claude, I asked it to see what would happen. And it said, put the DTO in the application layer, because that way it's an interface between what's calling the application. That works unless I need to define a query, define an interface to abstract away behavior. Well, now that DTO can't live there because my infrastructure layer can't reference my application layer in that way. So, yeah, eventually you just pick away and decide you'll fix it later. Do something, write code. That's all that should really matter. The right way, you'll learn the right way through doing, through trying, through failing. And that right way is the right way for you. If you're working on your own stuff, does it matter what some person who has made a dozen videos of doing code the right way tells you to do? They're not building your software now. You're building your software now. So don't stress that piece. Doing stuff like this, like joining in and sharing this sort of stuff, having an opinion, asking questions, which is, again, more than welcome. If you don't understand what we're talking about, ask the question if you want to. There's no wrong questions here, especially considering what this project's all about. Ask a question. We can discuss the whys, we can discuss where it sits, etc. So if we do DTOs, I hate. I can't. It's bugging me. And we move streamer DTO into our data transfer here, right? Refactor this, adjust the namespaces. Your repository CS, what's in that? Well, in that is a set of wrappers around Ardalis's stuff. Realistically, this is only to be able to build an abstraction around specific repositories. So this sets up the interface. This is his I repository in Ardalis specification. This sets up an ability to do this. Yeah, go call data transfer quick. I don't like DTO. So what this does is allows me to define an application repository that takes an application DB context, and that's it. So it's just kind of a set of adapters to his repository stuff to get into, so I don't have to implement interfaces all over the place. That's it. That's as deep as I go on the repository piece. There's no extra code on this side, like, oh, get me all this, right? As you see me, so this is the spec, right? Reference share kernel. There you go. This is a spec. I'm saying select out this, so streamer becomes streamer DTO. Include channels. Ultimate will include a nested collection of channels in here, where the channels URL is not null or empty. That's what we want. So live streamer spec. That's what we called it right now, just for demo. And then in the query, we just say, go to the repository, get me. So we're saying, I want a repository of streamer. So that's the root object, right? Get that. So ultimately, Ardalis is basically just layering on top of that DB context, right? So again, if someone of his experience and his talent is building a repository around DB context, I'm not going to stress it. It's not unit work. I did some gymnastics. in the application layer. I wonder what would happen if you combine your repository pattern with this awful application thing I did. Application handler. Customer picked up handle. So you've got your application. You created a mediator. You just basically hand wrote your own mediator, right? Yeah. You've got something that you can say inject an application handler, and then you say handle this event or this command, right? And or the request. You've termed it event there, and then request here. And then that's just routing to the right thing. That's a mediator. And then you've got each one of these. So you've got way more. Yeah. You've got way more. Okay, so in this one you had command. Yeah. Yeah. So the beauty of the spec is the way it is right now. Second, if I want to delete all the live streamers, I can do await repository dot delete async new live streamer spec. Right. I can do that. What is it like? Streamers. I can't do that one because it's not a direct mapping. But if I have one that is just, if I remove that, right, do that, that should work. Why don't you work? Huh. I mean, I'm not gonna dig too deep. Morning Mojo, by the way. But yeah, this is possible. So you can use the spec to delete data as much as you can query data. There's just the way I've set that up. I don't want to spend too much time playing around with that right this second. But yeah, so you can use the spec for multiple things. You don't have, and that's one of the benefits of having the spec. Is it's kind of like when I first got to link, I was like, this is great. Now let me create a method that represents this piece. Oh, I can't do. Let me create a method like I want to wrap this massive link query in a method of some sort and call that. Nope, can't do that. So repositories give you the ability to pull that complicated link away. This can get kind of complicated, right? This is not. I'm most of my use cases so far are basic CRUD, but it can become complicated. But it wraps it up into this specification so that your code can remain clean, and this can be named something that's intelligent and meaningful. Code base I've been referencing is in the middle of a refactor, just FYI. Some of it has been brought all the way to where I think it should be, other parts. Yeah. I'm not judging it. Yeah. Yeah, you have to be careful about which ones you grab. So let's move that to shared kernel. So now our infrastructure references shared kernel, our application references shared kernel. Why are you having an issue with? What are you having an issue with there? Now over here, if I do that, we're going to reference infrastructure, which is fine because it's presentation. It can do that. What are you not liking here? Oh, restoring packages. Oh, there you go. I need to work. Anyways, Doctor, thank you very much for the conversation as always. And the resub, I do appreciate it, sir. Have a great day at work. Thank you. Okay. So now we'd have this iStreamer query. We could. And some of this is overkill right now because I don't know how I'm going to use these. So one question I would have is, do you build the version that supports the client and the server at the same time all the time, or do you just decide I want to be able to use this in the client, I want to be able to use this in the server based upon what rules do you use to establish those things, and why is this also automatically selecting .NET 8 for everything? I thought it established this was .NET 9. Let's make sure these are all on .NET 9. Because apparently my default is still .NET 8. This is going to break things, but we shall persevere. Yeah, that's .NET 9. That's .NET 9. I'll start at 9. Okay, we have .NET 9. Apparently, I'm creating projects and they're automatically .NET 8. Awesome. So, as always, if there are questions, if you have opinions on what I'm doing, feel free, join in the conversation. We can discuss this. We can debate this. We'll get to a place where the application code is everybody's. Rider default .NET version. How to change the .NET framework in Rider. I think that'll be a long since changed, but .NET Console, UTF-8. Default .NET framework version. I don't see anything saying default .NET version, so I just got to be very careful that I don't pick the wrong one. So anyway, let's go and do this. This bugs me. Source developers.stream dot API. No, that was not the right thing, was it? Use your brain. Web API. Do not use top level. We're going to use top level statements. We're going to use minimal API. So developer.stream. I really don't like this way of doing things, by the way, but I see why it's beneficial for this project particularly. Let's remove the defaults. Let's basically not leave hello world in there. We'll have open API. We don't need comments like that. This way, no. I dislike it. I'm doing it because it is more standard practice in .NET. And this is a project that will be used by people, or hopefully picked up and developed by people. Yeah, if you look at Liquid Sky, right? So I use solution folders, but then I name them just after the thing they're after. I decided to do this a long time ago. I don't know who or whether it was just a realization, but basically just the thing it's talking about is all you care about, because from a solution perspective, these are all the pieces of the project. Doesn't like repeating the product or the company. It just yeah. If you call that API application domain infrastructure, we know it's developers.stream. I could call that developers.stream. Well, this becomes the namespace, right? So in this case, it makes a messy namespace the way I've got it. That can be fixed later, but because this does not need to represent anything other than the name of the project, right? What this comes down to is this, right? So later on, I can do whatever company name I decide. Company dot, pipelines dot application later, right? I can do that. There's nothing stopping me from doing that later. And then refactor the entire code base using that style. But it doesn't matter to the actual visual here. Right? This comes about because it's the default way that a namespace or the assembly is called. So your assembly will come out as developers.stream.application.dll, and your namespace will be developers.stream.application.dll. I can still change that here. I can change that to, developers.stream.pipelines, right? So I can change it here and here, and then refactor everything. But that can still be called pipelines application. There's no actual need. And in a folder full of, company name, project name, dot whatever, it's just like, well, it's just a load of noise. Why? So yeah, it's just the same thing repeated. But just so you know, you don't have to call these the same thing as the namespace. It's perfectly legit. It's perfectly acceptable to change it. In this case, again, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do a large refactor at some point. And the reason, I don't like it, I don't have a company name set up, and I don't want to do something right now. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know how I feel about company name on my work code. Let's get development with a slight caveat that is a quirk of Blazor if it's still a thing. Everything is this company. Too early, so loud. Okay, so if we have an API, that's app.map get streamers, and this takes in a I sender. Oh yeah, we're gonna have to introduce mediator. Sorry, but we're gonna have to introduce mediator. I'm not. I was structuring this out, but I think I want to do enough to make this feasible. Unless anyone has any strong objections, I'm going to use the mediator library I use in. I'm not going to use Jimmy Bogard's mediator, which is a more 262 million downloads compared to 1 million. I was asked to add the company's name to the namespace for a new project I was using, and I held my tongue. But there's an issue I ran into with the component library where the project name and default namespace didn't match. The isolated CSS didn't work as expected. I'm hoping it was just something I did wrong, and it isn't really a limitation. If someone is coding something to be expecting the name of the namespace and the project name to match, that you can't help. That is a ridiculous thing to do, though, to match it on a string. No. That's the sort of thing that I'd probably been motivated to go fix in an open source project. Because, again, you shouldn't be limited to what your project name is. Your project name has no bearing on anything other than your structuring and organization of the code. The code underneath yes, that can be namespaced, and for consistency later on, I am more than happy to go and namespace and even attach assembly names when an actual, for Liquid Sky, when an actual company identity is possible, I will go through and do that. Yeah. Wow, he hasn't updated since September 21st, 2023. He's working on version 3 of this though. So let's add the source generator. So you add the source generator into the application layer, the area where you're going to use Mediator in this case, right? What it does, I think it will implicitly pull it at that. So what we do is we'd say, okay, we need a public record query, right? That returns an I, it's an I query that returns I enumerable of stream.dto. You think that's, is that what I want? Mediator abstractions, maybe I need that. Yeah, there we go. And then this becomes an iQuery handler of query and I enumerable of stream.dto. We're not pulling result just yet. Move that into there. Make that async. And there we go. Okay. So this is going to look kind of dumb for a little while, right? But trust me, it's workable. There's two ways of doing this, right? You can have getLiveStreamers query and getLiveStreamers handler as two classes, and then obviously that's that and that. We now created two classes, whereas this object is never going to be associated with anything but this handler. So if we put them under the same class and use the class essentially as a sub namespace, it allows you to be more. You never see the handler, you just see the query, but it allows you to be a little bit more expressive and gives you some, structure to the code. So over here now, see how that now wants to add mediator, even though I don't have mediator installed in here, right? So what we do over here is we go builder.services.add mediator. Well, we'll get there. Install package that. And then that goes to that. And then we do return sender.send. Oh no, we need to async this. Return await sender.send get live streamers.query. When we reference that application, you see how mediator became available, add mediator. This version of the library, this implementation library uses source generators. So add mediator is a method that's generated by that. And what it does is, I saw Dota's register this to this, this to this. Every time we change one of these, it basically just modifies that add mediator to do that for us. So it's automatically adding the registration in. The benefit of that is there's no reflection on startup. With the mediator library, unless he's changed it of late, it still uses reflection, so it's going to do a query of all the things that you tell it about, and it's kind of messy. Whereas that add mediator method is actually generic. It's a generated method from the mediator library that then introduces this method that I can now use. So that would now be available to us. So we have a shared kernel, we have a data transfer object in there with right now ID, name, and blurb. We don't have any data, so it's not like we have to worry about that right this second. We have a contract, we have a repository, we have context, right? At this point, let me try and do I commit? I'm not sure I want to commit. I know there's a lot to commit, but I want to kind of get some of these pieces wired up so we can kind of see them, how they would work, and get the structure started. So I'm going to hold off a little while longer. I apologize if it's triggering in any way we're doing that, but there's some questions I want to answer. So let's see if we can do this. So in here in the infrastructure layer, now there can be multiple components to the infrastructure. No, because I don't. Again, I'm not committed to how this is going to look, and a commit then has to be changed and then track history. And even if I squash them, it doesn't really make a difference right this second. This might change around in a little while. And I've done nothing that can't be redone very quickly. Once we get to a point, I want to get to the point of I understand where we're going to use I stream a query in both the client and the server version of it. At that point, that's a good commit point because that then means there's established pattern and things are working. The commits would have little value at this point because that wouldn't be. I think this is the right structure. Let's just try and do entity framework call add migration. I want to see if this is. Let's do this. Create a database configuration. This is a static. This is essentially an extent. We're going to create an extension method. iService collection. Actually, we can do iHost builder, I believe here. Add database. This iHost builder. Application builder or host builder? Which one is this? This is a web application builder, so it's an iApplication builder. Builder. Builder dot. Oh. That's not what I want. Is that not web application builder? Is it not iHost application builder? There we go. What I'm trying to find is the lowest interface to extend off of, and then I can add the behavior. I thought that to the point of wrong. I thought the way I was doing this in Liquid Sky in a few different, because I have a few different versions of the and database, because depending on which component I'm building, whether it be a service or an API or whatever, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Then I was watching someone else add an extension method in probably the video I was watching yesterday on Azure. I'm like, and I keep seeing those sorts of things appear, and I'm like, I'm not doing it wrong. There's the same things over and over again. There's no actual clean way. So add DB pool DB context factory. This is going to be application DB context. Right. The reason I'm adding this now is because I can use this as the jumping off point. Actually, that's a good question. How do I do the migration? Adding migrations, Aspire, app host. I couldn't select the app host. IDF core migrations. Ah, void. Interesting. I'm totally wrong on that one. That's interesting. Okay. Full star? No, not for us. Options. So this is going to require manage NuGet packages, entity framework, core. And then star np. Let's add that. So this is going to reference Postgre. Sorry, my brain's speeding ahead of me right this second. So based upon this article, which I will share, it's kind of an interesting way of doing it because, or thinking about it, is because actually the migration stuff, how do you set the app host and set the database? Okay. So the project is data, the start project is app host. Okay. That's our infrastructure. The infrastructure has a context, even though it references domain, that'll be fine. And what we do is we basically use this in the app host to do that generation. So where will the migrations live? They should live in the infrastructure still. So the reason I was starting to wire this up inside of the API was for the reason that you need an application to do that. But then it quickly dawned on me that, well, hold on, the app host is the thing that starts up the database. So how's that going to know about this piece? So technically, I want the app host to be the one that migrates. But now I have to. I still think this is lacking. At some point, we're going to have to tell it to run the migration when it starts. Right now, it's for 1 dB. There'd be only one. Options. Options that use. There's another one that I don't think I do in the typical way. I have a project for the DB context and store procedures and the other repository related things. Then I have a separate project for the entity models and finally a project specifically for the migrations. So the only thing there different is the migrations. So infrastructure, this is the DB context piece, right? This contract layer doesn't need to, this contract for iStream and Query doesn't actually need to live in the same thing as the infrastructure here. And the domain object, the actual objects are here in the domain class, in the domain repository, domain library. So it's not that dissimilar. Options dot using PG SQL. And PG SQL. That's not, somehow that's not. Create migration. What? Why are migrations? Why are we creating? Why are we adding a hosted service? Really, Microsoft? Why does this feel so complicated? It's, hey, I'm starting up. Do this thing. Why does it need to be a hosted service? So, okay, so we have an API model, migration service, and API service. So migration service is another hosted service of API DB initializer, use SQL Server, migrations assembly, execution strategy, workaround, nice, awesome. Enrich SQL Server context. So we have this. Oh, we're not even going near Azure Functions for me right this second. Me and Azure Functions are not, we're not best friends. I feel Schnabel, by the way. What? This just feels complicated. So we have an API, so API model, API service. API service creates a DB context. Use SQL Server, that's fine. The app host. So the app host, we say add the project migration service, wait for DB1, with reference to DB1, wait for DB1, and then you say the project depends on the migration service. That makes sense. I understand that. I'm not debating that part. Just like why do we need an entire migration service? Okay. Let's do this. Hold on. You need a DB connection to start with. Configure the connect. O goes to O dot. We need to learn about Postgre. There's also the spy shop in that same repo. Shop, catalog DB manager, migrations, right? Catalog DB initializer. Seed, yeah. Using Migrations assembly. Oh, you can't use pool. You can't use pool DB context fetch, or you don't use the same way. Builder.services add and okay. God, we've got some interesting ways of doing things. Services dot add. Oh, it's not what I accept. There's a connection string. Builder.configuration. So you could use EFCLI to do the migrations. You can specify the connection string during that step, which means it could be part of a pipeline. Instead, I use a console without DB contents in startup and use the package manager console to do the migration that way. Like you said, it seems overly complicated, but it's maintainable and understandable when you get the initial grasp of it. I hate migrations. I think they are a complete pain in the backside. I've never seen migrations last very long in terms of their stability. Maybe I've not been around the right projects, but they've always tripped us up eventually. I hate this. So I dislike having migrations in there. New solution folder configuration. I know. I understand the need. That's why I'm persevering with the migrations piece. It's just from a production standpoint, migrations, they take a lot of work to do migrations properly in a production environment. It's great saying, yeah, let's add some new columns, let's put some extra pieces in here, but then when you need to move data around and do that, or the worst is if you have to roll back a migration. That is where you really get to test things if you have changed data in that migration. And .NET EF migrations are just, I added some columns, I deleted some columns, etc. It's nice and simple, but when you really try to use them, yeah, they upset people. Developers.stream, source. It's remembering what I selected last time. Developers.stream migrations. Exactly. The up and down is great in theory. Yeah. From what I'm aware of, these aren't for prod Aspire shop. No, it's migrations in general. But it takes a lot of work, one line is the point, right? It takes a lot of work and you have to be very confident with what you're changing. So the up and down methods in the generated migration come into play. I've done advanced things like update store procedures, copy a table to create a new version of it, new index, and copy the data back into the new table. And you've done that in the up and down. Two-phase migration for the win. Hi, Des Fowler. Welcome in. When people say I think of migrations from our COBOL legacy app to our .NET legacy app. Sally, hello. Add migration. DB context class. Your producer isn't listed. Help. Oh yeah, you need the designer, don't you? In the one that's gonna do it. So is the designer gonna live in the entity framework? Which one's gonna have the design? It's gonna be infrastructure, right? That needs design. This I always mess up. I haven't found it to be a lot of work. In my opinion, it's the same as writing scripts and giving them to a DB admin and they're tracking some file somewhere. If you have DB admins are very scared by migrations from my experience so far. They do not like the idea of the developers doing that sort of stuff. My intention so far, by the way, is on the Liquid Sky project is to basically build out the structure as I want it, and then build migrations. Yeah, I'm not debating that it's not possible, but to me, I've never seen. You will be the first person I've met that has actually used them. Yeah, if you've got DB admin, I'm surprised you'd have DDL permissions. Yeah, normally they try and keep you away from that thing, and they don't like running those sorts of automated tools anyway. But again, the down is is where migrations get scary. Okay, let's see if. And yes, I'm not messing around with. There we go. That's a starter project, not the DB context. Why are you not detecting the DB context? So it is that needs a designer. You've got entity framework core. Light mode. Brain. I'm trying to figure out which parts I'm going to do right a second. So I want the migrations to live in there. I want the DB context to come from the infrastructure and the startup project to be the service. Mars, good morning. So that's not the right one to do that in. Let's remove that. I mean, you should always back up before you do a major migration of data. Backups are good. If you're gonna run migrations and stuff, it's always worth having a backup. .NET migrations rely on that EF migrations table. To get our work a week on. How was your trip? Trip was okay. Trip was I got home at 11 o'clock on Friday night. So yeah. I create an Aspire folder, or did I create everything in source? I created everything in source. Yeah. I went to Missouri for work for a few days. This is going to be service, worker service. Let's do that. Yeah, that's fine. Just indicating the DBA would be the one maintaining the scripts in a similar way, and it was analyzing our ability to do this type of management using C# in a repo. Yep, I'm using too many words. Back to focusing on the code. No, I respect the maybe I've just not had the opportunity to work with migrations enough to understand them as deeply as you do. But it's still, every time I've come up against them, then the people I've been working with, there's no way they're going to let them go. It's just not going to happen. So the problem with the migration is you need the pieces of the migration. To create the migration, you need the pieces to connect to everything. That's what I'm trying to figure out right this second. So in the example, what they do in here, they add the context design system to the app host. And they set the start project as the app host. So I can't have the migration service be that, because that's not using the app host in that context. So let's have a look. So the app host references the migration service. I don't know how I feel about the app host piece. Well, let's do it. So they create the migration service in here. I keep opening Liquid Sky, called Liquid Sky. They add the database. They create the migration service, right? So we have developers.stream migration service. So let's add a reference to that. Projects.migration service. And that reference is PostgreDB and wait for PostgreDB. So it needs to use it and it needs to work with it. And then this needs wait for migration service. So we can't start the actual app until the migration service is run. Come on, SI. Trying to the word for lovely or nice, I think, steaky, and the word for steak, steaky. Yesterday, I was trying to do my Japanese stuff, and I was like, it gets confusing every time. Okay, I'm hoping that we'll get the migration at least built today. Oh, wait for completion. There we go. That's the difference. That is a very big difference. Wait for completion. This needs to run and end before this can start. Coffee too. Yeah, just pour coffee over things. It's fine. What is that? No, tastes burned. So we go to the migration service. The migration service. See, this one they're using SQL Server, right? In the shop, they're using a different style of doing this, and they're using Postgre. Catalog DB initializer is a background serve. They're using background service. They're using background service in this one as well. No, hosted service. Okay, they are, yeah. Why does this feel so complicated? I'm only on an anime-educated random word knowing Japanese speaker, although I did an instant immersion course repeatedly for about 2 years straight and still haven't been able to learn conversational Japanese. I barely know English and obviously can't type it as apparently by half of the script in chat. Yeah, everyone's forgiven in chat, that's fine. You're always forgiven when you're typing online. Um, yeah, I've been trying to study Japanese through like Duolingo and stuff for a couple of years. I need to sit down with my books and go through it, but conversational, absolutely not. Can I pick out some words? Yes. Apparently, I have a vocabulary of several hundred words. I just don't remember them, how to use them. Yeah, it might be more complicated, but nobody's going to read the docs that say run these CLI commands. Well, I get it. I'm not debating. This is a useful thing to do. So someone can check out the project, hit run, and it goes. I get the benefits. I'm not, and that's why I'm persevering with migrations. Migrations are the right thing to do in here for getting people up and running with the project without run step 3. Now do step 4. That turns people off, right? If they can just run it and then go and log in, awesome. That's perfectly cool. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not debating the how, and this is exactly why I didn't commit, by the way, because now I'm not sure whether the pieces are going to live or the yeah. Let's call this the um, initialize DB contents worker. Step 642. Click this. Absolutely, that would be if. We inject the service provider. We're going to get scopes. We're going to get all sorts of stuff to run things and enrich SQL Server DB context. Okay, let's go and figure out. So in our migration service, we're going to need entity framework core. We're going to need npg SQL or whatever it's called. Entity framework Postgres. They have their own for. But that's from 2016. That's fine. That's 2025. This is new. This is coming in. You'll probably end up having some instructions to create user secret once you get to the point of connecting to the DB. You'll see. So glad the data report you told you is not backend services. Yeah. Some instructions are fine. And again, what's going to happen is I want to get this into a place where we can run and build and query some data that we've seeded into the database, right? And we can see it on the screen, so we can see the layout, and then if someone wants to go and play with the UI, they can do the play with the UI to the heart's content. We have the structure in place that we know how to deal with data from the client version or the server version of the data, and that structure is understood. Because I want to start learning the right questions to ask around that, right? That's a pattern I'm not used to. With that established, then people can check it out, and if they have struggles running, then they can talk. We can talk through it. We can go through it. We can add documentation or add steps in there and clean it up, and that's for the benefit of open source projects. But yeah, let's see if we can get this in first. So builder dot services dot add. This part's upsetting me because the entity framework core PostgreSQL. Add DB context pool. So add DB context pool factory application DB context. That's fine. Reference that project. Options.use mpg SQL builder.configuration.get connection string. This is where we had the question, right? Where did I do that? When we reference the app host. Again, if you are new to the stream, if you are wondering what the heck's going on, you are more than welcome to ask questions. You're more than welcome to pass opinions. Their own documentation disagrees with that. Yeah, they don't. Is it that or is it that? It should. Right? That's what I'm looking for. Hit connection string. I'm still reserving many opinions because I'm excited to see the solution you come up with. I'm sure I will learn some different approaches I didn't think of. Maybe. Maybe you'll be like, oh, that's horrendous. I prefer my way of doing things. And those are opinions I hope that you can share. And I know that you're more constructive than that's horrible. So I'm willing to tempt fate that way. But good software isn't. If you're building software as a team, it's not built well when one person has vision and nobody has input. If you're following along, and just doing what someone else does, then you're not going to grow and learn. You've got to question, oh, why are you doing that? I don't like that. Why do you do it that way? And a lot of the things we do because we've done them for a long time, right? 25 years of development, I'm going to have some things set in my ways, right? I'm just going to do those things because I do them. Doesn't mean I can't change. I must leave now. The robot overlords require my time to build them. Thanks for the stream. I'm glad I caught it today. Apex, thank you very much for coming and hanging out. Good to see you. Have a great day at work. Okay, so we have that, and then we have, so we use a SQL Server, migrations assembly. That's an interesting one. SQL options, migrations assembly. That's options start. Start. That does not have that concept. Apex, thank you very much. It doesn't show up there, so like, oh, like you tripped. What do you mean? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. True, but it's also not helpful to try to force someone to use my methodology. I like to leave room for creativity, which is the potential of showing me something cool. I tried to press to give somebody. Yeah, it's happened once or twice. Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Okay. Okay, so retrain. Let's not even mess around with that. Enrich SQL Server DB contents. We're not even messing with that. Let's do that. Let's go to the app initializer. Ultimately, all we care about is this piece, right? We just care about, can we get a, I'm not using, why are you using, oh, we're doing this so we can inject some, okay. So this is telemetry. So we're adding the ability to trace things. I'm not going to panic about that right this second. I want to make that an actual initialize contents worker. Let's do that. Okay, so I'm not sure why we need to create a scope in there, but we'll I service provider. This is going to be application DB context. Not sure that's going to be. No, context factory of application DB context. That's going to be a factory. I don't like that. That's not getting me what I think it's getting me. Ah, that's not using. Await. Await. Ensure database async. I'm just going to take their methods right this second, just for the purpose of learning. Okay, now last link. What's this? How to aspire with the full DB context factory. The DB context factory doesn't work. Add DB context pool. Okay, so they don't recommend using. They do add DB context pool for that, and then they do builder.enrich. That. But that's not available to me. That's SQL Server still. Not sure what. On SQL Server. Dot said something about configuring pooling in the app settings. My knowledge of pooling is almost non-existent. Pooling is literally the tracking the number of connections they have open and trying to assign you the right thing. So, let's, yeah. Add pool DB context factory gives me a context factory, so it'll manage the connections. So it'll decide how it's going to do things. Application DB context. Application DB context. Closure can be eliminated. Strategy. Migration transaction to avoid partial. Okay, so that's what the strategy is meant to do. Remember, the migration service should only be run at once at the start of the app, so don't have to worry too much about too many DB contexts. No need to be too concerned about how many connections the way you would in the app. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. Really? You don't take the cancellation token in there? That's an odd. Closure can be eliminated. Method as overload to avoid closure creation. We'll worry about that later. I've got to get this moving. All right. So that's context, context. Stopping token, stopping token. Just remove. It's redundant. If it throws an exception, it throws an exception. So then the migrations, if we do add migration, then that is migrations project is there, and that is app host. Oh, why do you not let me select DB context? Have I not set that up right? Infrastructure, context, application, DB context. Yeah, it's configured. Yeah, it's fine. What? There's a DB context right there. And they reference it. The migration service references it. So if I go to the migrations, I get the benefit of keeping migrations as a separate project. That I like. I've not done that in the past, right? So that's a good idea. This tool is just a visual wrapper around the CLI stuff, right? Both of these are valid start projects. The app host is probably the better one because it will start, it will create the database, and then it will run the service, right? My concern here is let's see, the project must have at least one. Why is it not getting DB context? Let's see if it's a build problem. Let's see if it's just a DLL's not lining up problem. Okay. Where do you get DB context class from? Just randomly click on something and open it. Migration, not finding DB context. It's either I've not added a design library somewhere. Add migration initial. So the project with a class that inherits DB context, but that's not. So add migration. So again, if I do infrastructure, oh, there we go. Did that just work? No. Migrations project, infrastructure. There we go. Where's that going to create that then? It's going to create in the, yeah, it's going to create that, yeah. Not in the migrations project. It did create it though, which is a good sign because it has to run and build. I think a recruitment company has messed up my chances at the Iceland job I applied for. Oh no, they dropped the ball. That's not good. Ugh. No. I don't want this in here. I don't want this in here. Delete. Come on. I'm rushing now and that's not going to help. Reference infrastructure. Entity framework. Postgres. SQL. Install that. It's okay for the migrations library to understand the technology it's using. Because it's building the migrations for that particular platform, right? So I don't have an issue with doing this here. My hope is that now, because I've referenced it, it will actually add the migration here. There we go. So in the migrations project, the migration service, I can do that. So ensure it is referenced by a start project migration service. So now this needs to reference the migrations. Entity framework call, add migration, initial. This is what it needs to start up and build stuff. Change the target project, change of migration somewhere. By default, the migrations, but I'm not trying to do the default. I'm trying to keep them separate. Deliberately. Anyway, unfortunately, I am out of time. I will try and get this up and running a little bit more before Friday. So the overall goal is to get a basic database in there, get some querying, get some overall structure of how we're going to build the application out, get the query. More than welcome to jump in Discord afterwards if you want to, but I need to get my work laptop set up and stuff. Get the components set up so we can query the data, we can see what it looks like for an API call from a database call and set that structure in place so that we're then able to confidently say, okay, well, now we can ask the question, when should I do this thing, right? When should I use this component over this component? When should I use, like, within the Blazor world, right? What is the right way to do this, and what is the right way to configure this? There's all these questions I have that I'm going to learn through and struggle through, right? But once we've got the basic structure in place, it becomes more and more possible for people to pick up the project and run with pieces. So hopefully on Friday we can get all this tidied up. We can get the pattern in place where we can query the data and get something displaying on the actual app. And then what we'll do is start to structure out some stories or some items that need to be worked on, and then open it up for PRs and kind of come up with those rules. So hopefully by next week we're kind of picking up a little pace and getting some features in there. Things like building out the the overall API, like the integration API for people to ask for streamers and stuff. That isn't the same as the API that's going to be used for the data on the actual website. There's going to be, a lot more involved in this project than what's here now. And hopefully you'll be able to just hit app host, run it, and have a working version on your machine. And that would be good. But anyway, I will be back tomorrow. I'll be back onto Liquid Sky. There is some progress made on Liquid Sky in terms of the UI, the UX, the functionality there, and some ideas are starting to grow. I'm still getting to the point of getting the user profile in place, but we'll get there. Hopefully, I can get that done by tomorrow. It feels like fun times. Thanks for stream. Hope you have a productive and enjoyable rest of your day. YouTube online. Are you streaming today, or is it messed up and you're streaming tomorrow? Either way, if you don't actually follow Online yet, if you like .NET Dev, Online normally streams Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and streams his work projects, and and a Music Monday stream afterwards. Do you advertise that in your stream, in your Discord? And it's not on your regular channel, right? Have you created a different channel for it? I haven't seen it. I haven't caught one yet. So I look forward to that. Online creative. Okay, cool. Thank you. See, this is the sort of thing where when we get developer stream working, you're able to attach both of those as streams of views, so someone can look at one line and see your alternate streams. So there you go. Anyway, if you have further questions, if you want to chat about software development, if you want to, just generally chat, there is a Discord linked in the cards below, and you're more than welcome to join that if you're interested for further conversation. Let's go and raid Sinisberry. I haven't raided Sinisberry in a while. So Sinisberry is working on the game with Dan, and they're building that. It looks like he's doing an RTS in Pirate Jam right now. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like Sinisberry is working on an RTS, which is cool. So we'll go raid Sinisberry. And I will catch you all again soon. Thank you very much for joining me. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.